The day Amelia's true love, Julian, came back to town, she sat me down to inform me of her plans. Julian hasn't been doing well since he went away, she stated, her voice devoid of any warmth. He's been sick, and I need to take care of him now that he's here. He only left in the first place because he couldn't bear to see me become a burden to my family. You've had a comfortable life with me for the past few years, but I owe him more than I could ever repay. I'm telling you this as a fact, not because I am seeking your opinion. I looked at her, my wife of 4 years, and saw only a cold, distant stranger with a flicker of hostility in her eyes. It was clear that even after all this time, she held no trust for me, no affection. Thank you for letting me know, I replied, my voice even. Amelia seemed momentarily taken aback by my calm acceptance. Her lips parted as if to say something more, but she ultimately remained silent. She was always a woman of few words, at least with me. After she left the room, I went to my computer and began filling out an application for a volunteer teaching position in a remote, mountainous region. She always believed that the comfortable life I'd led had made me soft, incapable of facing real hardship. Before I could prove her wrong, however, I knew I had to resolve the matter of our marriage. It all started 4 years ago, when Amelia's family business was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Her mother, aware of my long-standing crush on Amelia, approached my family to propose a marriage alliance. At the time, I was completely unaware of Amelia's history with Julian, so I happily agreed. When Amelia found out, she protested by staging a hunger strike. I went to see her, hoping to reason with her, but her eyes showed nothing but pure indifference toward me. I don't love you, she said, her words sharp and clear, shattering the hopeful fantasy I had built in my mind. I understood then that forcing a relationship would only lead to misery. I proposed to my parents that we break off the engagement to set her free, but they were furious. In a family like ours, they told me, your personal feelings about marriage are not the priority. They placed me under house arrest to prevent me from ruining the deal. On the 7th day of my confinement, Amelia came to my room. She looked pale and unwell, and I felt a nervous sweat break out on my brow as I tried to explain myself. I tried to call it off, I really did, but my parents— Let's get married, she interrupted, her voice flat. For a decision that would dictate the course of our lives, she was unnervingly unemotional, as if she were merely discussing the price of vegetables at the market. A small, rational part of my brain needed to understand why she had suddenly changed her mind. She lowered her head, a pained expression crossing her face. It took her a long moment before she finally whispered, "He's gone. He's not coming back." My father later told me the full story. Julian had accepted a large sum of money from Amelia's family and disappeared from her life. Back then, she was on the verge of a complete collapse, locked away in her room. She hated him for leaving, but she hated the circumstances that forced her love away even more. Seeing the silent tears in her eyes, I nodded my agreement, fully aware that she didn't love me. In my youthful optimism, I truly believed that if I was just good enough, patient enough, one day she would see the value in me. So, we were married. We worked side by side to save her company, and with the considerable help of my family's resources and connections, her family's business not only recovered but thrived. We became an inseparable and professionally successful team, and our eventual wedding felt like a natural, logical step. At the ceremony, Amelia promised before everyone that she would be good to me for the rest of our lives. She kept that promise in her own way. She always brought me gifts from her business trips, she spent holidays with my family without complaint, and she always held my hand in public. To any outsider, we were the picture of a happy, devoted couple. Behind closed doors, however, things were entirely different. One night, after a particularly stressful week at work, she drank too much and fell asleep in the study. I carried her to our bed, and as I laid her down, her eyes fluttered open. They were red-rimmed as she murmured my name, Leo. For a fleeting moment, I felt a surge of warmth, a flicker of hope. I leaned in closer, but her expression shifted in an instant. She suddenly grabbed a fistful of my hair and slammed my head against the floor. Pain exploded behind my eyes, but it was nothing compared to the shock. This was an Amelia I had never seen, her usually kind features twisted with pure hatred. "Leo, it's all your fault," she hissed. "If you hadn't liked me, my mother would have never forced me to marry you. Julian wouldn't have taken the money to leave me, and he wouldn't have gone away and met that awful person." In that moment, I understood everything. She had harbored this deep-seated hatred for me for 4 years. I was the symbol of everything she had lost. There would never be a place for me in her heart. The crushing weight of the pain and the sheer unfairness of it all brought tears to my eyes. Suddenly, she released me and collapsed, crying into her own hands. "How could you marry someone else out of anger?" she sobbed, her words no longer directed at me. "Who else loves you the way I do? I finally have my wings, and yet you belong to someone else. You say you don't want to ruin my happiness, but you are my happiness." Her outburst was because Julian had just gotten married. She wasn't sober, and she wasn't speaking to me. I held my own emotions in check, my body trembling. "Rest," I said softly. "I'll go make you some soup." As I closed the bedroom door behind me, the tears I had been holding back streamed down my face like a waterfall. When I returned with the soup, she was sound asleep. The next morning, Amelia awoke with her refined, composed facade perfectly restored. She saw the dark bruise on my forehead, and her expression filled with what looked like genuine concern. "What happened? Does it hurt?" "No, it doesn't hurt," I lied. "I got up for a glass of water in the night and hit my head by accident." She frowned, immediately called a doctor to bring some medication, and personally applied the ointment to my bruise. Her careful, gentle attention was so convincing that it made me wonder if the events of the previous night had been nothing but a horrible dream. She never mentioned Julian when she was sober. She never got angry with me, she just smiled that polite, empty smile that never reached her eyes. Everyone told me how lucky I was to have a wife with such a good, stable personality. I could never speak of my frustration, my quiet suffering. It would have been like punching a pillow, utterly useless and exhausting. All I could do was convince myself that now that her first love had married someone else, she would eventually move on and maybe, just maybe, turn her affections toward me. But Julian's marriage was a disaster. He fell into an abusive relationship and ended up hospitalized with serious injuries. Amelia immediately flew out to him, paid his medical bills, and financially secured his divorce. That night, she didn't come home. The next morning, as I was preparing to leave for the office, my assistant called. He informed me that Amelia had hired a new secretary. I frowned, a sense of deep unease settling in my stomach. Just as I was processing this, a fashionable, slim man approached my desk. Despite his pale complexion, he seemed to be in good spirits. "Hi, I'm Julian," he greeted me with a practiced smile. "It's my first day." The lack of sleep was evident on my tired face, a stark contrast to his neat and tidy appearance. I didn't reply. He leaned closer, a familiar, cloying expression on his face. "We should have lunch together sometime, my treat." Before I could respond, he added, "Is something light okay? I usually prefer spicy food, but my protector has been keeping me on a rather bland diet since I haven't been feeling well." Protector. We both knew exactly who he meant. My frown deepened. "Who's your protector? What's his name?" Surprised by my directness, his smile faltered. "Oh, just someone you don't know," he replied evasively. "Since that's the case," I said, my voice firm, "let's have dinner together next time. You can bring your partner, and I'll bring mine. It'll be on me. Consider it my way of playing the good host." Julian's face went pale, and he looked as though he was on the verge of tears. "Okay," he whispered. "I should get back to work now." He scurried away. My assistant watched him go, then looked at me, his expression full of concern. He hesitated for a moment, then finally said, "I saw him getting out of Mrs. Thorne's car this morning. You should be careful, sir." Careful? I had lost this battle before it even began. Who could possibly resist the undeniable pull of a first love? I initially thought Julian was just trying to provoke me, to make me suspicious. It turned out I was far too naive. As soon as I got back to my office, Amelia stormed in, glaring at me with undisguised anger. "I told you Julian just got back and that he isn't well. If you're upset about something, take it out on me. Don't you dare target him." She was seething. "I've already given you the title of my husband. What more could you possibly want? I know you're upset that I brought him into the company, but he just got back and I'm all he has in this world. He's also dealing with severe depression. Why can't you just show him a little compassion?" So, in her mind, I was the one causing problems for Julian. She didn't believe me and she never would. What was the point of explaining myself? Seeing my lack of response, her anger only grew. "You are in the wrong here, Leo. You need to go and explain things to Julian. You're being petty and deliberately making trouble for him. He is kind-hearted. I'm sure he'll forgive you." I stared at her, searching her face for even a hint of guilt or doubt. There was none, only a cold, serious conviction. After a moment of profound heartbreak, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Apologizing is out of the question, Amelia, I said, cutting her off. If I don't apologize, what are you going to do? Fire me? Divorce me? She looked completely surprised, and then her expression hardened into anger. Leo, I never expected you to be so incredibly narrow-minded. She was disappointed in me. If I had known it would turn out like this, I would regret everything. Now was the time for regrets. She seemed uncertain, probably because it was the first time in our entire marriage that I had ever stood up to her. I kept my face a blank mask. Amelia, if there's nothing else, please leave. Your first love's affairs have absolutely nothing to do with me. Let's not bother each other. Amelia couldn't believe I was showing her out. She left, angrily slamming the door behind her. I found the whole situation both laughably absurd and deeply pathetic. We had been married for 4 years, and the first time she ever truly snapped at me was in defense of her former lover. My assistant later mentioned that Julian had gone to Amelia's office crying. She apparently spent a long time comforting him, trying to cheer him up. She even had the assistant book a private cruise, treated Julian to an expensive sushi lunch, and then took him out on the water for the afternoon. The first rule of being a good assistant is confidentiality, so I had to wonder how mine came to learn all these details. It was clear that someone wanted him to hear it, and wanted him to pass the information along to me. Amelia always claimed she wasn't a fan of grand gestures. For my birthdays and our wedding anniversaries, I received a simple bouquet, a quiet meal, and a gift that was always picked out by her assistant. When I was sick, she would simply drop me off at the hospital and immediately return to work. It had always been painfully clear whether she loved me or not. I went home and began sorting through my assets, while simultaneously preparing divorce papers and a letter of resignation. The company belonged to her family. I was merely a department manager. I would quit my job, take what was legally mine, and leave it all behind. When I entered Amelia's office to deliver a report, Julian was leaning against her, acting far too cozy, on the verge of kissing her. "What are you two doing?" I snapped. Julian jumped back, startled like a frightened rabbit. He quickly pulled away from her, his face turning ghostly pale as he shrank back. His voice shook as he said, "Sorry, I just got something in my eye, and she was helping me get it out." He lowered his head, his eyes already welling with tears. "You two talk. I'll just step out." But Amelia pulled him closer, her voice soft and gentle. "I asked you to be here. Don't be scared." She then turned to me, her glare annoyed and dismissive. "Do you have something to say?" I looked directly at her. "Is there nothing you wish to explain?" She arched an eyebrow, her patience clearly worn thin. "As you can see, it's working hours, and I'm discussing business with my new secretary. If you're feeling jealous, I can explain. I'm taking Julian for sushi, and then we're going on a cruise this afternoon. Would you like to join us?" She was being deliberately spiteful, but what Amelia didn't know was that someone had already told me all about her plans. I blinked slowly and handed her a folder of documents. "This is the financial report for the month. Go ahead and sign it." I glanced at my watch. "The sun sets around 3 p.m. today. You'd better have an early lunch, or it'll get chilly out on the water." I looked over at Julian. I mean, he's not in the best of health. It would be easy for him to catch a cold, given his condition. Amelia's expression darkened. Without even looking at the paperwork, she scribbled her signature on the line and tossed the folder back at me with a frustrated sigh. "Satisfied? Now, enjoy your little outing." Back in my own office, I saw the signed divorce papers sitting on my desk. Tears began to fall like a kite with a broken string. The pain was more intense than I had expected, a suffocating weight in my chest. I packed up my personal belongings, waiting until the last possible minute before heading home. I wasn't in the mood to be there. Watching Amelia and her first love have a joyous outing all day was difficult. There were no new updates from Amelia on her social media, but Julian's page was a different story. "Basking in the sun and sea breeze with someone special." His short caption read, "A knife twisting in my gut." He shared a grid of 5 photos. None of them showed their faces clearly, but each one depicted intimate angles, a hand on a knee, heads close together. They took one trip, but the closeness in those photos overshadowed the entirety of my 4 years with Amelia. When they got back to the house, I was finishing a bowl of simple congee. Julian feigned surprise. "Oh, why are you just eating congee? There's no nutrition in that." As he spoke, he pulled out several takeout boxes filled with sashimi, various cooked dishes, and even a cold, hard steak. "Leo, I'll likely be around here often from now on. Please consider this a small token of goodwill. I hope you don't mind." Mind? Of course, I minded. Why should I be expected to eat their leftovers? I recognized all the food from the photos Julian had posted. I took the boxes from him and tossed them straight into the trash can. Leo? Amelia's voice was a sharp warning. Julian's eyes immediately welled up with tears, a look of deep grievance on his face. He asked if I didn't like the food he brought. He then crouched down, fishing the takeout boxes from the trash. If you don't like it, I can prepare something else for you. I can give these to the stray cats outside. It's getting dark and it looks like rain. They won't be able to find any food. He crouched lower, carefully retrieving fallen pieces of food and placing them back in the boxes. Each time he bent over, a tear fell onto his hands. The warm light from the kitchen made his thin figure look even more frail and pathetic. Having a scene at the office was one thing, but bringing this manipulative drama into my own home was another. I was shaking with anger. Once again, I took everything he was holding and threw it back into the trash. This is disgusting. Such hypocrisy. Don't you dare try that act with me. I'm not buying it. Julian clutched his shirt hem tightly, tears streaming down his face as he looked up at me. Leo, you're misunderstanding. This is the best I could afford. I know you don't like me, but the stray animals are innocent. He held the spoiled food and cried as if I had committed some terrible crime against him. Amelia had seen enough. She rushed over, pushed me aside with surprising force, and gathered Julian into a protective embrace. I stumbled backward, my hand reaching out for something to steady myself, but I found nothing and fell hard against the edge of the coffee table. Her eyes glared at me, filled with a disdain so profound it made me feel like a complete stranger. Leo, what you so easily dismiss is the very best that Julian has to offer. To please you, he only tasted a little bit of everything, because he was always thinking of bringing some back for you. What gives you the right to insult him like that? You were just born lucky. Without your parents, you'd be a nobody. I have been patient with you, but you had better watch yourself. I stood there, a chill spreading through my entire body despite the warmth in the room. So this was Amelia, speaking out in the name of love. She seemed to have forgotten all those nights during the company's big merger when I stayed up with her, all the times I ran around pulling strings and handling connections on her behalf. Amelia gently reassured Julian. Treat this place as your own home. Feel free to command the servants as you wish. There is no need for you to please anyone. You are also the man of the house. I watched them quietly, then got up and left the room. I was still standing right there, and yet she had already called him the man of the house. What did that make me? It didn't matter. In just a few more days, once the divorce procedures were finalized, I would be gone for good. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. Early the next morning, just as I was finally drifting off, Amelia came into my bedroom with Julian in tow. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, hitting his face. His expression was cold and triumphant as he looked down at me. Julian had nightmares all night, Amelia announced, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. This room has a peace charm. Let him sleep in here from now on. I was born at midnight, and I had been a weak, sickly child. My grandmother always said that my presence attracted bad things, so she had a Buddhist master place a peace charm in my room every year. I don't know if it ever truly worked, but I had made a promise to her that I would keep doing it. So, every year on the first day of the Lunar New Year, I would have a master come and perform a ritual for peace, not just for my own sake, but so my grandmother could rest peacefully in heaven. Amelia knew all of this. Amelia stared at me intensely. You've been pampered your whole life. To you, this is just another room. What's the point of all this superstition? To me, it was our bridal chamber. It was the vessel for all my expectations of love, all my hopes for our marriage. For the woman who was meant to be the lady of the house. Never mind. You're right, I said. My indifferent attitude seemed to anger her. She suddenly reached up, tore the peace charm from the wall, and smashed it on the floor. They're dead. Why do you keep this stuff around? It's bad luck. I looked at the broken pieces of the charm scattered on the floor. I bent down and began to pick them up. It didn't matter anymore. With the divorce, none of these sentimental things would be going with me. I softly said, You're right. She scoffed. Julian was meant to be my lifelong companion, yet the role of my spouse was given to you. Who are you to be jealous of him? I replied numbly, I know. I'll make room for him. Let's just get the divorce over with. Are you threatening me? Her voice was icy. Now it's your family that would be begging me not to leave, not the other way around like when my family had to beg yours. Indeed, she had grown her wings now. I threw the broken pieces of the charm into the trash can. Broken things belonged in the trash, as did unfaithful people. Seeing my cooperation, Amelia's expression softened slightly. Let the servants clean this up. Just make sure you move out soon. Let's end this matter here and now. I forced a smile and replied, okay. There was one day left before Julian officially moved in. All around the villa, familiar decorations were being replaced. Even my favorite lilies in the garden were being uprooted and replaced with Julian's beloved red roses. The red roses symbolized a promise. I love you every day. 4 years ago, when I married her, this villa was an empty shell. I designed everything, from the interior decor to the layout of the garden. Every single plant was meticulously chosen by me. At the time, Amelia said she was too busy and was leaving it all up to me. I thought it was a sign of respect, of trust. But now, as I watched Amelia skip work to accompany Julian to furniture stores and florists, I could no longer deceive myself. Opening my window, I saw Julian standing before the new rose garden, looking up at me. He smiled softly. Leo, what do you think of this rose variety? Amelia picked it out just for me. He stood in the middle of the roses, dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans, basking in the sunlight as if he were waiting for his new bride to take his hand. His gaze was challenging and triumphant. At our wedding, he taunted, Amelia is going to fill the entire venue with this rose garden to make up for all our lost time. Did you have this at your wedding? I said, you weren't her first choice, and for someone with Amelia's status to marry a divorcee, you should probably keep things low-key. Otherwise, she'd lose face. His smile froze, and his face turned pale. His lips began to quiver as tears rolled silently down his cheeks. Just then, Amelia appeared at the other side of the rose garden. Her look was venomous. Leo, I am divorcing you. You're going to be a laughed-at divorced man. You are both men, yet you show no empathy. Julian was just teasing you. Just last night, he was urging me to treat you well, even deciding not to move in so as not to affect our relationship. I was hesitant, but seeing your attitude now, I've made up my mind. Julian is moving in tomorrow morning. Moreover, I want you to personally help him move his things in. If you refuse, I will finalize our divorce immediately. It was clear that Julian had intended to provoke me from the start, and she, as always, only saw him. I stood by the window, looking down at her, my expression unchanged. Fine. She thought I was compromising, that I was afraid of the divorce. She then left with Julian. I leaned on the balcony, silently watching them go. Julian reached out his hand first, and Amelia didn't hesitate to take it. I saw him tiptoe to whisper something in her ear, then look back at me with a triumphant smile. I remained unfazed. Suddenly, Amelia grabbed his hand and started running, just like in a movie where the heroine pulls the hero in the white shirt and they sprint together towards their happily ever after. In that moment, I felt like the third wheel, the villain wrecking their beautiful relationship. That night, I went to my parents' house and told them about my decision to leave. I had expected backlash. In the business world, profit and alliances often trump personal emotions. I was incredibly grateful when they supported me without hesitation. My dad told me to go ahead and do what I felt I needed to do. My mom just kept hugging me and crying. Why do you have to go abroad? Do you really have to go to such a remote village? I heard there's no signal there, and you won't have good food or warm clothes. You've always lived in such comfort. How will you manage? Amelia had said the same thing. But who's to say something is impossible if you've never even tried? Later that night, my phone rang. It was Amelia. Julian is moving in tomorrow morning. Are you hiding at your parents' house on purpose? I wasn't. You have 1 hour to come back, she cut me off. Or I will have to bring Julian with me to come and get you. Amelia's status in the business world was so high now that even my own father would defer to her. She had long since abandoned the sweet, deferential demeanor she had when she first started visiting my home with me. I knew her threat was real. I'll be right back, I said. She sneered. That's more like it. I said goodbye to my parents and caught a cab back to the villa. I hadn't expected to find Amelia waiting for me at the front door when I arrived. Her face was so dark it looked like it could wring water. She saw me step out of the taxi. Why aren't you driving the car I gave you? It was a bespoke gift for our first wedding anniversary. For a time, I drove it everywhere, but after her drunken confession, I had stopped. I just didn't feel like driving today. It's been a while since you've driven it. So she had noticed. I simply nodded, not wanting to waste my energy making up excuses. As I tried to pass by her, she blocked my way. Under the dim glow of the streetlight, I saw a rare moment of vulnerability on her face. Julian can never replace you, Leo. My husband's spot will always be yours. He'll move out as soon as he's better. In the chilly night air, I felt a sting in my eyes. I looked at her and sighed. I understand. I'll welcome him tomorrow. Her tightly knitted brows finally relaxed. Every gesture of goodwill from her could be traced back to a source of guilt. The next day, Amelia left at dawn to go and pick up Julian. Meanwhile, I got up, grabbed a cab, and headed straight for the airport. To reach the mountains, I had to take a 3-hour flight, followed by a 4-hour train ride. After that, I switched to a bus for another 2 hours, then a van, and finally, a motorbike ride on winding mountain roads for another hour. I finally arrived at the remote village where I would be volunteering. It was surrounded by mountains, with a sparse population, limited internet, and a very poor phone signal. I only contacted my parents to report that I was safe once a week. The rest of my time was spent with the children. Though the village was poor, the people were kind and sincere. During the day, I taught the children at the local school. After school, they would take me on walks through the mountains to herd sheep, enjoy the breathtaking views, pick wildflowers, and catch small fish in the stream. Time passed quickly. Gradually, I began to forget the past. The memories I shared with Amelia became fuzzy and distant. The constant ache in my heart began to fade. The long, lonely nights spent waiting for someone who would never truly come home drifted away, as if they belonged to another life. 2 years later, on New Year's, my mom called. "It's been 2 years, Leo. Haven't you let her go yet?" Caught off guard, I replied honestly, "I'm thinking about the kids here in the mountains." My mom sounded doubtful but resigned. "She's been looking for you everywhere for the past 2 years. I don't think she has let you go." She told me how Amelia had shown up at the villa that morning 2 years ago, anxious to explain that she didn't really mean for me to help Julian move. She had found my room empty, the wedding ring sitting on the dresser, and the divorce papers I'd had delivered to her office. She had broken down completely, rushing to my parents' house, then to the office, only to realize I was truly gone. She had spent the next 2 years searching, hiring private investigators, and calling my parents relentlessly. "There's no if anymore, Mom," I said, cutting her off before she could continue. "Look, I have to go. The kids are waiting." I quickly ended the call. I never imagined there would come a day when my ex-wife would matter less to me than a class of children in a forgotten village. I returned to the city 4 years after I had left, only because it was New Year's and my mom had laid on the guilt thick. "Everyone else is with their family on New Year's Eve," she'd cried over the phone. "Don't you feel guilty leaving us all alone?" My mom might have been exaggerating, but she did truly miss me. Seeing me back made my parents incredibly happy. My dad's eyes were red as he told me, "As long as you're happy, son, I won't interfere in your life anymore." Amelia came to visit on New Year's Eve. She hadn't made things difficult for my parents in the past 4 years. She had even sent some lucrative projects my dad's way. She was wearing casual clothes and a red scarf that I immediately recognized as a gift I had given her for our first Christmas together. She looked thinner than I remembered, the sharp edges of her personality worn down, replaced by a calm, deep sadness. Seeing her again, I felt unusually peaceful. She came bearing a mountain of expensive gifts. Before I opened the door, my dad reminded me to keep business and personal matters separate and not to let things get ugly. I accepted her New Year's gifts politely and looked at her calmly. "Amelia, Happy New Year." Her voice was hoarse. "The divorce papers. That wasn't my intention. I never wanted to divorce you." I looked at her, my voice steady. "Amelia, you say you didn't want a divorce, but you brought Julian into our home." Her brow furrowed, and a deep sadness filled her eyes. She tried to explain, "I just wanted to make up for the harm my family did to Julian. I always thought we were just a business alliance, that I didn't really have any feelings for you. It wasn't until after you left that I realized." "It's too little, too late," I said evenly. "You didn't love me, and I could endure that. I believed that one day I could melt your stony heart. But what I couldn't bear was you hurting me over and over again for Julian. We've been divorced for 4 years now. It doesn't matter who was right or wrong anymore. My dad suggested I invite you in for tea to talk about business, but if your visit is for me, please take your things back and don't come here again." Her face went pale, her lips trembling slightly. Words barely came out. "Leo, I've come to ask for your forgiveness. We're strangers now. Forgiveness is too heavy a word." I returned the gifts to her and gently closed the door. That door felt like a final divide between two worlds. Amelia and I would have no more crossings. The next day, my mom brought me a glass of milk and told me that Amelia had stayed outside, looking up at my window all night. My dad had tried to talk her into leaving 3 times, but she didn't go until it started to rain heavily and Julian came, crying, to take her away. On New Year's Day, I went to a party with my mom. It was full of her friends and their business associates. I found it boring, so I wandered off on my own. I didn't expect to see Julian being cornered in a hallway near the restrooms. He looked pale, trapped, and deeply upset as some rich kids taunted him ruthlessly. They called him Amelia's lapdog, a twice-divorced man who tried to edge me out and failed miserably. The insults just kept coming. At one point, one of them doused him in wine. In a place like this, without Amelia's protection, he had no choice but to endure it. I stepped in and helped him. Julian stared at me, his eyes full of resentment. Leo, all of my misery is because of you. For years, he still hadn't gotten what he wanted, and yet he was blaming me. If you hadn't disappeared, Amelia would never have realized she loved you. She wouldn't have resented me all these years. I rubbed my forehead, a headache starting to form. I divorced her to make room for you, and you still couldn't succeed. How is that my fault? His eyes looked like they were about to pop out of his head. If it weren't for your push and pull game, Amelia wouldn't have been such a mess. And don't you get smug. If you weren't from the Ashton family, she'd ditch you just as easily as she ignores me now. Is my family the only rich family around? I asked. Besides, with Amelia's status in the business world now, does she even need a man? Maybe, just maybe, she really doesn't love you anymore. His silence was telling, though he would never admit it. We were each other's first love, he insisted. She loves me. Then why has she been publicly single for 4 years? She should have married you by now. I couldn't bring myself to hate Julian anymore. His appearance had made me realize that Amelia was not someone I could rely on forever. I had moved past the heart-wrenching pain of before. Seeing Julian now was like seeing my past self, my judgment clouded by a hopeless love. Have you ever thought about living your life differently? I asked him. At least, don't make a woman your entire world. I had said my piece. There was nothing more to add. When I left, Julian was just wiping the tears and wine from his face. On the way home, my mom mentioned some wealthy woman who wanted to set me up with her daughter. I had seen enough of this circle. I was divorced and no longer young. The truly outstanding women wouldn't look at me, and the older, more desperate ones didn't appeal to me. I laughed and told her, there are plenty of successful men these days. Being a single CEO is nice. There's no need to become a stepdad. My mom understood. She mentioned it to my dad, who couldn't stop grinning. He immediately started pressing for me to join the family company the next day so he could finally retire. Once I was back in the world of business, I was completely swamped with work. It all brought me back to the days when I worked alongside Amelia. Except this time, I was working for myself. Amelia would often come to my office under the guise of work, but she would never talk about business. She knew my company didn't need her supplies, so she started with heartfelt gestures. One day it was porridge, the next a homemade lunchbox, then Thai food, and the day after that, it was Japanese. She always seemed to know exactly what I was craving. Our roles were now completely reversed. I no longer waited for her to come home for dinner. Though I had long since stopped caring about those occasional, empty gestures of hers, the persistence was annoying. I gave my assistant a warning. If you let her in with food one more time, I'll introduce you to a new job working directly for her. He panicked and promised he wouldn't let her in again. After being turned away a few times, Amelia only approached me about legitimate work matters. Then, I didn't expect Julian to show up at my office. He had lost a lot of weight and looked utterly exhausted. It was chilly outside, so I let him in and had my assistant make him a hot coffee. With tears in his eyes, he apologized. It was my fault back then. If it hadn't been for me, you and Amelia would have never gotten divorced. Maybe, I said, but rehashing the past doesn't change anything. I handed him a tissue to dry his tears. He told me that after I had left, Amelia wouldn't even touch him. She just deposited a large sum of money into his account on a regular schedule, but she wouldn't see him and showed him nothing but disdain. He had more money than he could ever use, but he felt like he was suffocating. He felt sick all the time but couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. I listened, but I couldn't find any comforting words. The dynamic between the three of us was just too awkward. Finally, he looked up at me, his face weary, and cried as he asked, Leo, if I step aside for good, would you take Amelia back? I shook my head. There are plenty of women in the world. He looked at me in surprise, baffled by how easily I had let her go. But then, He seemed relieved. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting her go." I stayed silent. He didn't understand Amelia. She was a wolf untamable, ambitious and proud. Once she stopped loving someone, that was it. I understood that now, but Julian didn't. He always thought Amelia's cold behavior was because of me. A year later, Amelia announced her new relationship with the son of a jewelry tycoon. I heard that Julian caused a scene at their engagement party, but Amelia had him thrown out by security and immediately cut off his funds. 3 days after that, I received a small package. It was from Julian. The note inside was short. "You were right. She doesn't love me. You were right. I shouldn't have made her my whole world." But I realized it all too late. At the end of the note, he drew a small bow. "Truly sorry." I wrote back a single sentence. "It's never too late to wake up." But there was no recipient for my letter. Julian had taken his own life. I heard Amelia and her new husband were just using each other for business. At an industry event, the gossip was buzzing. Rumor had it that Amelia's husband had been caught cheating. Rather than feeling guilty, he had brazenly claimed that a business marriage required no love or loyalty, only money. He had even disgustingly suggested sending a handsome young man to Amelia as a peace offering. She was reportedly furious. Hearing about her life now, I felt nothing. I turned to leave the event, only to run into the subject of the gossip herself. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Leo," she started. Just then my phone rang. I ducked away from her reaching hand to answer it. "Hold on, honey. I'm on my way down now." Maybe the happy grin on my face stung her. Her eyes went redder. "I heard you're in love," she said, her voice trembling. I raised my left hand, showing off a shiny new wedding band on my finger. "Amelia," I said with a smile. "I'm married."